The first time I noticed something wasn't right, I was standing in the middle of a Lowe's trying to remember if we needed light bulbs. That's not a metaphor. It was aisle 12, and I was staring at a wall of LEDs like they were written in ancient Greek. Amy had sent me there to get a sink stopper, but I'd already gotten distracted by the faucet displays and a guy trying to convince a stranger that smart toilets were the future. That's when I saw it. A man, mid-50s, khakis too tight, hair combed like it was in court testifying, FaceTiming what I assumed was his wife. And boy, he was smiling like he'd just won a toaster oven on a game show. "I got the right one this time, sweetheart," he said, beaming. Something about it made me pause. Not the man, not the faucet, but that ridiculous grin. That's how Amy used to look at me. Once. That thought stuck in my head all the way home, rolling around like a loose screw in a junk drawer. To be clear, Amy and I weren't the couple that stares longingly at each other while holding matching coffee mugs and an ad for arthritis cream. We weren't that couple, but we were comfortable, predictable in a good way. The kind of rhythm you settle into when two people have enough shared history to keep the wheels turning without needing to reinvent the damn wheel every Tuesday. We had our routines. Saturday morning errands. The passive-aggressive dance around who'd unload the dishwasher. And for the last 3 years, a shared Google Calendar that did more for our marriage than a therapist ever could. Amy had been acting odd lately, sure, but not suspicious. Just offbeat. Like someone walking around in shoes one size too small. Not enough to make a scene. Just enough that you start wondering if maybe it's them, or maybe it's you. She started watching these strange vintage documentaries at night, things about mid-century architecture, niche regional airports, the social politics of diners in 1960s Chicago. She'd get that intense, distant look on her face, like she was decoding some great mystery. I asked her once if she was into this stuff, or just trying to prove something to herself. She told me, it's calming, which, in Amy speak, could mean anything from, "I need a break from you," to "I've joined a cult." Now, you might be wondering why I'm going on about home improvement stores and documentaries, but here's the thing. Betrayal doesn't knock on the front door with a dramatic soundtrack. It seeps in slowly, wearing the same face you kiss goodnight. And if I'm being honest, I probably still wouldn't have figured anything out if it hadn't been for the mailbox. Yes, the mailbox. It was one of those heavy-duty cast iron jobs Amy picked out when we moved into the neighborhood. Statement piece, she said at the time, which is how I learned mailboxes could make statements. For the last 2 years, it had stood at the end of our driveway like a little black guard dog, collecting coupons, bills, and the occasional graduation announcement from nieces we forgot we had. But that Thursday, it had a letter. A real one. Envelope. Stamp. Handwritten. Which in 2025 is basically the equivalent of a handwritten scroll delivered by a medieval courier. It wasn't addressed to me. It wasn't even addressed to Amy. It was for M. Carson. At our address. In our mailbox. Now, I'm no detective. I couldn't find a clue in a cereal box. But I do know we don't have a Carson in the house, unless Amy had taken to adopting boarders without telling me. I left the letter on the table like it was radioactive and went to the garage to change a light bulb that didn't need changing. 20 minutes later, it was gone. Not misplaced. Not stacked with the junk mail. Just gone. Like it never existed. The only thing in its place was a faint whiff of whatever Amy's new obsession was, lavender and bergamot or some other scent that sounds like a guy who plays jazz clarinet. That's when the wheels really started turning. Not fast. Not dramatically. Just a slow, rusty creak. Like a porch swing nobody's used in years. It wasn't jealousy. I didn't think she was running around behind my back. I thought maybe she'd joined some weird pen pal group for middle-aged women who were rediscovering themselves through poetry or interpretive dance. Then came the trivia night. Now, trivia night at the Elmore Community Center isn't exactly Las Vegas. It's 8 teams, lukewarm coffee, and someone who once got 3rd place on a Jeopardy! Online test emceeing with way too much confidence. Amy and I used to go twice a month, mostly because it gave us something to argue about that didn't involve grout. This time, she begged off. Said she had a virtual seminar on gender and post-war advertising, which I didn't know was a thing people had seminars about. So I went alone. Sat with Craig and Denise from down the block, nice people, but Craig once got into a heated debate over the correct spelling of Haagen-Dazs, so you have to pace yourself. About halfway through the night, during a heated round on 90s sitcom catchphrases, I overheard something from the table behind me. He said he'd leave her if she just asked. It was a woman's voice. Quiet. Not whispering, just soft. Then, laughter. That kind of knowing laugh that stings more than it should. And she still hasn't told him. You'd think after all this time. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. Because Amy's voice is the kind you recognize through walls. I left early, told Craig I wasn't feeling great. He assumed it was the chili dogs. I didn't correct him. The next morning, Amy acted like everything was fine. She poured coffee, kissed my cheek, and asked if I could pick up new batteries for the smoke detectors. The woman who hadn't touched me in 3 weeks was worried about the fire safety of a house she was actively setting on fire. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. I went to Lowe's. Bought the batteries. Didn't forget the sink stopper this time. But I didn't go home right away either. I sat in the truck with the windows down, letting the early spring breeze run through the cab like it might carry off my confusion. And you know what the worst part was? I didn't feel angry. I felt embarrassed. Not because Amy might have been cheating on me, but because she was doing it like that. Whispering behind folding tables during trivia night. Letters from M. Carson. A seminar about ads from 1955. If you're going to blow up a marriage, at least give it a soundtrack. Some confetti. A bit of style. But Amy was always efficient. Subtle. Her betrayal came in lowercase letters and carefully scheduled evenings. And that, right there, was the moment I realized something was coming. Not a storm. Not a fight. Just the end. And I was going to be ready for it. The moment I started to suspect something, Amy had just started attending a community improv class. That, in itself, should have set off more alarms than it did. Amy hated improv. Hated people who did improv. Hated watching improv. Her exact words, once upon a time, it's theater for people who love attention but forgot to be good at it. And yet, there she was, every Tuesday and Thursday, leaving at exactly 6:40 p.m., claiming she needed to stretch her creativity. Stretch. Creativity. As if creativity was something you warmed up like hamstrings. Naturally, I asked her what changed. She blinked like I just asked her what shoes smelled like and said, "People evolve, Ryan." She said it in that way Amy always said things when she wanted to shut down a conversation without having to be the one to shut it down. The tone was polite, technically, but with the flavor of figure it out, you irrelevant houseplant. I tried to keep cool. It's improv. People go to improv. Yes, usually because they're chasing validation, but still harmless enough. Then came the receipts. Not metaphorical receipts. Literal ones. Because Amy is, above all else, deeply forgetful with her wallet. She leaves it in the fridge. She leaves it in the bathroom cabinet behind the Advil. And sometimes she leaves it in the car we both use. Which is how I found a crumpled Walgreens receipt wedged between the front seat and the center console. Dated the exact time she claimed she was in class, it showed the purchase of a cheap bottle of ginger ale, a crossword puzzle magazine, and a pack of sugar-free gum. It wasn't the contents that mattered. It was the timestamp. Improv started at 7. The receipt was printed at 7:12 p.m. The Walgreens is in the opposite direction of the community center. So I casually asked her that night how class had gone. She said they did warm-up exercises and then a long-form scene where she played a confused grandmother who thought her blender was a parrot. Her eyes lit up like she was describing a life-changing sunset. I nodded along like a supportive husband, even though Amy describing a scene she clearly didn't participate in was about as believable as her suddenly announcing a career change to professional bowling. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I didn't confront her. That's amateur hour stuff. That's what you do if you want a long speech full of circular logic and references to childhood trauma. I wanted confirmation, not confusion. So I did something uncharacteristic. I volunteered to pick her up from class. Amy hesitated, gave me a quick, "You don't have to," which we both knew meant, "Please don't." But I insisted. Said I'd be in the area, which was a lie so bold I half expected lightning to strike me through the ceiling. So Thursday night rolled around. I arrived at the community center at 8:40, 10 minutes before class was supposed to end. I parked, waited, sipped lukewarm gas station coffee I didn't want. At 8:59, the doors opened. People began to trickle out. 30-somethings in cargo pants and fleece vests, clutching reusable water bottles and radiating the smug satisfaction of people who think they just saved the world by pretending to be baguettes on stage. But no Amy. I waited another 15 minutes. Still no Amy. I texted. No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. The kind of response you get when someone's either in the mountains or actively avoiding you. At 9:37, she called me back. "Oh, sorry. We stayed after to do some feedback. Lost track of time," she said, her voice extra cheerful, like someone overcompensating for knowing they were about 5 minutes away from being found out. Feedback? That's what she was going with? I asked who was giving feedback. The group. You know. We just sat in a circle and shared impressions. I made a note in my head. Amy hates circles. She once changed hair salons because they rearranged the waiting chairs into a circle. The following Tuesday, I showed up again, this time without telling her. Didn't park right out front, parked a block away and walked. I figured if I was going to play detective, I might as well avoid the whole being seen like an idiot part. Class started at 7. At 7:12, Amy walked out the side exit. Not a big exit. Not the main lobby. The kind of side door where you half expect someone to be tossing out a mop bucket or sneaking out to smoke. She wasn't alone. A man followed behind her, about her age, maybe a few years older. Button-up shirt, jeans that looked a little too new, and hair that tried a bit too hard. He laughed at something she said, leaned toward her, not close enough to scream romance, but definitely close enough to whisper it. Amy tucked her hair behind her ear, nodded, and they both walked off down the sidewalk, heading not toward the parking lot, but toward the next street over. Now, I didn't follow. I'm not a private eye in a low-budget movie, but I did get back in my car, drive down the block, and spot them sitting on a bench outside an ice cream shop. No ice cream. Just sitting, talking, leaning in, laughing the kind of laugh that's rehearsed and careful. The kind of laugh Amy stopped using around me about 7 months ago. I took a photo, not for evidence, not to confront her, just so that later, when she told me I was imagining things, I'd have something to help remind myself I wasn't crazy. A few days later, I went to the community center, told them I was Amy's husband and wanted to drop off something she forgot. They looked confused. We don't have an Amy on the roster, the woman at the front desk said, peering over her readers. You sure she's in our program? I gave her Amy's full name. She clicked around on her keyboard like she was cracking government secrets, then shook her head. Nope. She must be attending something off-site. I asked what room the improv class met in. Oh, we haven't hosted an improv group here since February. They moved to the Y. Too many complaints. Moved to the Y? Too many complaints? February? It was June. I didn't say anything. Just thanked her and walked out, feeling like someone had switched out the air with something heavier. The rest of the week, I didn't mention it. I went about things as usual. I mowed the lawn. I fixed the broken drawer in the kitchen that had been giving Amy grief. I even restocked the fridge with that stupid seltzer she claimed to like because it makes her feel more alert, which I'm pretty sure was her way of justifying $6 water. Then Sunday morning, while Amy was in the shower, I went to her laptop. She'd left it open. The same laptop she claimed she only used for freelance writing and Pinterest rabbit holes. Except this time, she'd been logged into her email. There were no long confessionals. No love notes. Nothing that screamed scandal. But there was an email. From him. His name was in the signature. Roger Whitmore. Subject line. Last night. Smiley face. The body was short. You're too good at pretending you're just acting. Every time we rehearse, I forget it's supposed to be a scene. That was it. No lipstick on a collar. No secret lingerie receipts. Just a line that, if you weren't looking for it, could pass for something completely innocent. But it wasn't. Amy didn't tell me she was cheating. She told me she was acting. Roger told me what kind of scenes they were rehearsing. And me? I closed the laptop, walked out to the garage, and sat down on the old camping chair next to the toolbox. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at the drywall for a while, thinking how strange it was that the end of a marriage could come through a man who thought improv scenes were a valid replacement for a personality. And I thought, well, at least now I know where she gets her fake laughs. There's something really humbling about printing out an email that proves your marriage is a group project you didn't sign up for. Especially when your printer decides it's low on cyan and refuses to do anything until it's been appeased with a brand new cartridge that costs more than the actual printer. The email was black and white, mind you, but apparently even betrayal needs full color to be processed properly. After threatening the printer with early retirement, I finally had it. Roger's charming one-liner printed out like a fortune cookie written by a guy who wears skinny jeans and uses the phrase emotional depth unironically. I folded it up, stuck it in my wallet between my driver's license and an expired Arby's coupon, and went about my day like nothing was unraveling. Because in our house, normalcy was a high-performance sport. Amy was in the backyard, digging around in her attempt at a garden. She called it cultivating an eco-space. I called it burying store-bought tomatoes to feel something. Either way, she was out there with gloves that still had the price tag on them, making dirt look complicated. She asked me to help her repot something called hosta, which sounded like either a plant or a Scandinavian disease. I told her I'd be out in a bit, then watched through the window as she scolded a rake for being too bendy. I figured if I was going to say something, I needed to make it count. Not a dramatic blow-up or some teary Hallmark moment where we stare into the middle distance. I wanted facts. I wanted confirmation. Most of all, I wanted to say something without it sounding like I was writing dialogue for a B-list drama. So I went with an approach that suited us both, passive-aggressive errands. "Hey," I said as she came back in and dropped her gloves like they were part of a toxic spill, thinking about finally donating those improv flyers you've been collecting. Unless you're planning on performing Shakespeare in the garage. She blinked, caught off guard. "They're just reminders." "Inspiration. For what?" I asked, genuinely curious. "You planning a one-woman show about yard tools?" She smiled that tight-lipped, polite smile that said, I'd roll my eyes if I didn't think it would start a real conversation. Instead of answering, she went to wash her hands, which took longer than any two hands should require. I stayed where I was, flipping through the mail, pretending to care about a credit card pre-approval I had no intention of using. "Do you know a Roger Whitmore?" I asked casually, still looking at the mail. There was a pause. Not long. Not dramatic. Just long enough to register as a mental tab being opened in her brain. She came back into the room, wiping her hands on a towel like she was prepping for surgery. "He's in my class," she said, voice level. "Why?" "Just wondering," I said. "He emailed you. You left your laptop open." It popped up. This was technically true. I left out the part where I had also opened her inbox and typed Roger into the search bar like I was applying for a position at the FBI. Amy nodded. "We're working on a piece together." I nodded back. "Is that what you're calling it?" Now we were in it. The zone. The beautiful, uncomfortable space where two people dance around the truth while acting like they're building IKEA furniture together without swearing. "He's married, if that's what you're implying," she said, grabbing a glass of water she didn't drink. "Oh, that makes it better," I said. Married men are famously great at respecting boundaries, especially the ones writing emails that sound like rejected Tinder bios. She set the glass down. Still didn't drink it. "Are you accusing me of something?" I tilted my head. "I'm not accusing. I'm observing. Like a park ranger, but instead of squirrels, it's my wife sneaking off with someone who signs emails with smiley faces." Now came the defense. The carefully curated statements designed to create maximum confusion while technically denying nothing. "You know how lonely I've been feeling," she started, which was rich coming from the person who ghosted me in our own house for the better part of 6 months. I needed something for myself, something outside of just us. "Ah, yes. The spiritual awakening defense. A classic, right?" I said. "So naturally, you picked Roger. Because nothing screams emotional clarity like a guy who wears shirts with thumbholes and talks about scene chemistry over tea." Her face changed. She wasn't mad. She was calculating. Amy never yelled. That would require emotion. She preferred the cool disapproval method, subtle, sharp, and disguised as maturity. "You're twisting things," she said. "No," I replied, reaching into my wallet. "Roger did that all on his own." I handed her the printed email. She took it, scanned it, and then did something I hadn't expected. She laughed. Not loudly. Just a short, flat sound, like someone testing a microphone that didn't work. "That's out of context," she said. "Of course it is," I replied. Context is what people bring up when they've been caught with something that doesn't look great without a director's commentary. She folded the paper and put it on the counter like she was saving it for a scrapbook. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said. "I never said you did," I said. "But it's interesting that your first response wasn't confusion. It was justification." Now we were both standing there, silent, with only the soft hum of the refrigerator making things less bearable. I'd fantasized about this moment for a while, imagined what I'd say if I ever had proof. But the truth was, there was no satisfaction in it. No rush. Just the dull weight of someone finally admitting they've been living in separate houses with shared walls. "So," she said, trying to reclaim control, "what now?" I shrugged. "That depends. Are we still rehearsing scenes? Or are we back to real life?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked upstairs, not in anger, not in shame, just away. Like someone closing an app they're done with. And that, more than the email, more than the lies, told me everything I needed to know. Amy didn't cheat the way people imagine it. No lipstick, no late-night phone calls, no hiding in closets. She did it the way you skip pages in a book you're bored with. Quietly. Efficiently. Like she was doing a favor. I didn't follow her. I stayed downstairs, turned on the lamp, and stared at the email still sitting on the counter. Roger's words, printed on the cheapest office paper we owned, looked even dumber now than they had the first time. I poured myself a glass of water, no symbolism, just actual thirst, and sat down at the kitchen table, where so many other conversations had happened. Dull ones. Ordinary ones. Real ones. This one, though, wasn't over. It had just moved to a different chapter. When someone tells you to sleep on it, what they really mean is go lie in bed and replay every decision you've ever made while blinking at the ceiling and wondering how your life turned into a rejected sitcom pilot. I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the popcorn texture like it owed me answers. Amy, on the other hand, was in the guest room, which we used to call the storage room, because it had been storing unresolved issues since we bought the house. The next morning, she emerged dressed for work like she hadn't spent the previous evening giving Oscar-worthy performances in Selective Truth. She looked rested, composed, and fully committed to pretending we were just another suburban couple who coordinated trash days and argued about thermostat settings. "Do you want me to pick up the dry cleaning?" she asked like nothing had happened. I blinked. "Sure. If you've got time between improv rehearsals." She didn't respond. Just grabbed her keys and left like I was the one being difficult for not participating in her one-woman show about artistic license and selective memory. Left to my own devices, I sat down at my laptop and opened a new spreadsheet. Not because I enjoy Excel, only psychopaths and accountants genuinely love spreadsheets, but because I needed to start tracking things. Not emotions. Not suspicions. Logistics. If a marriage is going to fall apart, it may as well do it in neat rows and sortable columns. I titled the sheet Operation Reality. The first tab was Knowns and Unknowns. Under Knowns, I put Roger Whitmore equals Amy's co-star in emotionally vague betrayal. Improv class ended in February. It is currently June. Amy lies like it's a tax write-off. No apology, no denial, just rebranding. Under Unknowns, I had how long this has actually been going on. Why she picked improv as the cover story of all things. Whether she's still lying or if she's just coasting now. Next tab, Response Options. I made a list. Confront her again, 0 stars. Already did it. Got vague answers and a printed life folded like origami. Ignore it and see where it goes, 1 star. Works great if you're into living with tension and pretending your marriage is a political treaty. Do something she won't expect. That third one sat there for a while, blinking at me. I didn't even know what it meant yet, but it felt right. Amy was good at controlling the script. She was used to being the one who set the tone, changed the narrative, redirected the argument into something intellectual and hollow. But what if I changed the tempo? That afternoon, I decided to rearrange the garage. To anyone else, this might sound like avoidance. But to Amy, the garage was sacred ground. It was Ryan's space. She hated it. Hated the clutter, the smell of motor oil, the pile of extension cords I refused to untangle because it was a system. By voluntarily cleaning the garage, I was announcing that something was shifting. I pulled everything out. Tools, half-used paint cans, random wires that once had purpose but now looked like souvenirs from failed projects. I took down the broken clock she'd given me during our second year of marriage. It had stopped ticking after 3 months, which felt poetic if you're the kind of person who likes symbolism. I'm not. I just thought it was a bad clock. By the time Amy got home, the garage was spotless. Like, recently raided by federal agents spotless. She stood there staring, keys still in hand. "What's going on?" "Thought I'd start fresh," I said. "Clear out stuff that's no longer useful." She nodded slowly, like she'd heard a secret message hidden in the paint fumes. Later that evening, I brought out an old memory box. Not the sentimental kind. The practical kind. Tax returns, appliance warranties, marriage license. I placed it on the kitchen table and opened it casually while sipping on a soda I didn't even want. Amy looked up from her phone. "What are you doing?" "Inventory," I said. "Of what?" "Everything we pretended was fine." She didn't laugh. She didn't roll her eyes. She just stared. That silence told me more than a full confession ever could. She walked away without a word. 2 hours later, she came back downstairs. This time, with a different approach. "Can we talk like adults?" she asked, sitting down across from me. "Sure," I said, flipping to the Joint Assets tab in my spreadsheet. She didn't look at the screen. Just at me. "You've clearly made some assumptions." I held up a hand. No assumptions. Just observations. And a growing Excel file. You think I've had some grand affair, she said, tone calm. That I've orchestrated some elaborate deception. Grand. I said. Amy, I found out your cover story doesn't even run past February. If you're going to lie, at least get on a seasonal schedule. She sighed. It wasn't an affair. It was just different. Different. The worst word in the English language. Different is what people say when they change banks. Not when they swap out their spouse's trust for someone who probably calls himself an emotional nomad. I needed a version of myself that didn't feel tied down, she added. So you picked community improv and a man who still uses Hotmail? I asked. She had the nerve to look mildly amused. You're being unfair. No, I'm being accurate. Another silence. This one heavier. Not dramatic. Just waited with too many years of biting our tongues. I didn't sleep with him, she said finally. Good to know, I said. Makes everything else feel so much better. Amy stood up, walked to the sink, and stood there like she was going to do something but didn't. After a while, she turned back to me. Are we done? With what? I asked. The conversation or the marriage? She shrugged. You tell me. You're the one with the spreadsheet. I can make a new tab, I said. Call it Things Amy Says When She's Avoiding Accountability. She left the room. I didn't follow. Instead, I added one last entry to my sheet. New tab, final steps. First row, rehearsals are over. And I didn't mean the improv ones. The next day started the way all uncomfortable days do, with Amy announcing she'd be going into work early, even though her job famously didn't require punctuality or even consistent presence. She worked in client relations for a small design firm. Translation: she sent emails with exclamation marks and reminded people to mute themselves during Zoom meetings. Got a couple of early calls, she said while tying her shoes in the least convincing way possible. Her tone was stiff, like someone trying to narrate their own alibi in real time. Wow, I replied. Really taking the relations part of client relations seriously lately. She paused, just for a second, before continuing to tie her left shoe like it was a Rubik's Cube. You know, sarcasm doesn't make this easier. I smiled without using my eyes. It's not supposed to. And just like that, she was gone. Again. Now, if you've never gone through the unraveling of a marriage, I'll let you in on a fun fact. The most exhausting part isn't the betrayal. It's the logistics. You still have to take out the trash, pay the mortgage, respond to emails with subject lines like just circling back, all while your personal life is disintegrating like an expired parking ticket. By 11 a.m., I had finished fixing the upstairs shower knob that Amy said was temperamental, which was her polite way of saying it squealed like a possum when you turned it too far left. I fixed it using a YouTube video and an unreasonable amount of overconfidence. No applause followed. Then came the real project. For the last few years, Amy had managed all the passwords. Bank accounts, subscriptions, streaming services, that weird app she insisted we use for budgeting that color-coded every dollar like we were running a kindergarten for money. So I took it all back. Reset everything. Reclaimed my name on the accounts, reissued new cards, and unsubscribed from whatever online magazine she subscribed us to for the articles. Pretty sure no one read them, including the writers. I also set up a new shared calendar titled Division of Assets, a read-time drama, which I shared with Amy because I'm nothing if not detail-oriented in the face of emotional collapse. At around 2 p.m., she texted. Amy. Saw the new calendar. Cute. Me. Thanks. I was going to go with Amy and Ryan's mutual disinterest timeline, but this felt more professional. No reply, which meant she was either amused or making her fifth tea of the day while complaining about toxic tones to someone who also uses mindfulness as a cover for avoiding accountability. By 5:30, she was back. Earlier than expected. No announcement this time. No, I'm home, or let's not be weird. She just walked in, dropped her bag, and stared at me like I was an unpaid parking ticket she wasn't sure was worth fighting. We can't just keep dancing around this, she said. Who's dancing? I asked. I've been standing still the whole time. You're the one who brought choreography. She crossed her arms. Are you seriously going to do this? Just play the victim and make jokes. No, I said. I'm also managing our financial future in Google Sheets. But the jokes make it bearable. She rolled her eyes, which used to irritate me. Now it just helped me keep count. That was the fourth eye roll in 3 days. Pretty solid average for someone who claims to be overwhelmed. I don't want to fight, she added. That's convenient, I said, since you skipped the part where we had a marriage and went straight to auditions. That one landed. I saw it in her posture. The subtle shift people make when they've been hit with a truth they were hoping wouldn't come up. I never meant for it to get that far. I didn't realize scene work had a distance, I replied. Do you measure betrayal in feet or acts? She sat down. No preamble. No forced sigh. Just sat across from me like we were two coworkers debating whether to fire the intern. Look, she said, you and I both know we haven't been happy. We're functioning, but that's not the same as living. And so your solution was to find meaning through a man who wears friendship bracelets? Roger isn't the point. He really is, though, because he's the prop in your midlife reboot. She didn't deny it this time. She just stared at the table, then back at me. Do you want to stay married, Ryan? And there it was. The question that everyone pretends to prepare for but never actually does. Depends, I said. Are we talking about marriage in theory, or marriage to you? Her face didn't change, but something behind it did. A shift. Like her internal PR team realized they were out of spin. I'm not the villain here, she said quietly. Didn't say you were, I replied. But you did audition for the part. She stood up. You're being impossible. I'm being thorough, I said. Because I spent years thinking we were building something, and now I realize I was on the wrong blueprint. People change. Yes. But usually they don't invite Roger to co-write the script. We were quiet for a long minute. She didn't leave the room, but she didn't sit back down either. Just hovered like she was waiting for someone to cue her next line. I think we should separate, she said finally. I nodded. I already updated the calendar. Her face tightened. Of course you did. You'll find it under Thursday, New Beginnings. It's color-coded. She didn't respond. Just walked upstairs. Maybe to cry. Maybe to pack. Maybe to log into her improv group's Discord server to see if they needed a scene partner for Saturday. I stayed downstairs. Checked off the last item on my to-do list. Reclaim sanity. Redistribute streaming access. Schedule personal reset. Then I opened a blank document. Not for journaling. For drafting my portion of the official separation agreement. Because if Amy was going to treat this like a soft launch, I figured I might as well be ready for the main event. No more rehearsals. No more scenes. Just the final act. The thing they never tell you about ending a marriage is how much paperwork is involved. Everyone talks about the emotional toll, the starting over, the personal growth nonsense people say when they've just bought a second-hand couch and are trying to act like it was intentional. But no one mentions the actual hours you'll spend trying to remember which utilities are under whose name and whether the thermostat login qualifies as a shared asset. On Tuesday morning, Amy left a sticky note on the bathroom mirror that said, "Let's talk tonight?" The question mark was doing a lot of heavy lifting. It wasn't a hopeful question mark. It was the kind you add when you want credit for trying but don't actually want the conversation to happen. I left a response next to it. Sure. Bring bullet points. By evening, we found ourselves in the same room at the same time, a rarity these days. The living room had become neutral territory. She sat on the couch, legs crossed in that stiff, uncomposed posture she used during uncomfortable conversations, tax prep, and watching documentaries she pretended to enjoy. I took the armchair across from her, the one with the broken spring that made it feel like a mild prank every time you sat down. I've been thinking, she began, which was usually code for, I'm about to say something I've already decided and would like you to agree with it so I feel better. Always dangerous, I said. She ignored that. I don't want this to be hostile. I nodded. Good news. We've never been passionate enough for hostility. Amy took a breath, the kind people do before launching into a thesis. This wasn't how I imagined things going, obviously. I never meant for us to reach this point. But I think we can handle it with maturity. Maturity is what got us here, I replied. We were so mature we forgot to like each other. She looked down at her hands like they were going to provide emotional support. I've already started looking for a place, she said. Great. The sooner you pick one, the sooner I can figure out which walls I actually like in this house. That earned me a brief smirk, probably unintentional. And just so you know, she added, Roger's not part of that plan. Oh, thank God, I said. I was worried you were going to show up next month with matching tote bags and talk about open shelving. She didn't take the bait this time. Just stared at me like she was trying to remember if I had always been this difficult or if she just started noticing. I think you're enjoying this, she said. No. I just finally stopped pretending it wasn't happening. Silence. Not the heavy, dramatic kind. More like the awkward kind you get when two coworkers get stuck in the elevator and realize they don't know each other's names. I didn't sleep with him, she said again, like repetition would somehow improve the message. Still not the point, I said. You handed him parts of you that were supposed to be mine, whether or not there was a mattress involved. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is I spent the last 2 years thinking we were both exhausted from life, when you were just emotionally reallocating resources. Amy sighed, the way someone sighs when they're hoping the conversation ends before their self-image takes a hit. Do you want to divide things now or wait for the mediator? I appreciated the pivot. It was efficient. Cold. The exact tone you want in a meeting about dissolving a legally binding relationship. Now's good, I said, pulling out the folder I'd already prepared because I knew this moment was coming the second she started calling Roger. Just creative energy. We went through everything. Cars. Furniture. The savings account that had the combined passion of two people who bought groceries with coupons and disagreed about whether brand-name paper towels were worth it. It all went smoother than expected, probably because neither of us had the energy left to fake opinions. Then came the house. I should keep it, she said. It's closer to work. I looked at her like she just suggested the moon was a rental. You've worked remotely 3 days a week since 2019, I said. You once took a call from the bathtub. I'm just saying. You're just saying you want the house because you like the dining room windows. She paused. That was exactly why. I'd caught her once photographing the light patterns like they were rare butterflies. This was the same woman who called the color of our walls emotionally clean. Whatever that meant. I'll buy you out, I offered. You can use the money to find a place with even more emotionally clean walls. She gave a half nod, the kind that said she'd accept the terms but not the tone. We went through the rest. Art, books, the weird massage chair her aunt gave us that neither of us wanted to admit we secretly used. The only thing she hesitated on was the coffee table. I really like this one. You picked it because it was on sale and had vintage in the name. It wobbles. I'll fix the wobble. That made me laugh. Amy, queen of hiring TaskRabbit for IKEA builds, was suddenly promising to fix furniture. Fine. Take it. I'll enjoy not bruising my shin every time I walk past it. That concluded the division of property. I marked it on the spreadsheet and closed the laptop. Then came the last item. Are we telling people together or separate? I asked. I don't know, she said. Maybe just let it fade? Let a marriage of over a decade fade? I said. What are we? A local band? She didn't answer. We sat there a bit longer, neither of us saying what we probably should have said months ago, that the story had been over before either of us admitted it. We just kept flipping the pages hoping for a new plot. When she stood to leave, I followed her to the door. This doesn't have to be ugly, she said. No, I said. But it doesn't get to be pretty either. She hesitated like she wanted to say something meaningful. Instead, she settled for, take care of yourself. I nodded. Don't forget your coffee table. She gave a weak smile, then walked out. I locked the door. Not as a symbol. Just because I always do. Then I walked back to the living room, sat in the armchair, and opened the laptop again. Not to add to the spreadsheet. Just to delete the calendar we used to share. And that was it. Not a collapse. Not an explosion. Just two people who finally admitted they weren't a story anymore. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel